Notre Dame had a great opportunity to prove that they belonged among the best teams in college football on Saturday when they traveled to face a ranked Pitt team. And the Irish dominated from start to finish. And Sunday Night Live starts right now.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in to Locked On Irish. This is your daily home for Notre Dame football. This is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and thanks to viewers and listeners like yourself, Locked On is now the #1 sports podcast network in America. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame. I work as a producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish for several years now. And we are live on Sunday night, November 16th, coming to you live a little bit after 8 p.m. Eastern. Sorry, we had a little bit of a late start. We were dealing with some technical issues before the show started. Wanted to get those taken care of. But we're here. We're ready. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in for the live stream, or if you're catching this on Monday, thanks for making this your first watch or listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And before we dive in, please make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. That way you don't miss an episode and you'll get a notification for live shows like this one. We also went live after the game yesterday, so plenty of good stuff to talk about, and we have a ton to get into tonight. We're going to start with why I believe Notre Dame looked like one of the best teams in the country in their win over Pitt. Then we're going to hand out some well-earned game balls and highlight the best moments from the game. And finally, we'll dive into everything that happened on Saturday and what was another crazy day of college football and what it all means for Notre Dame's road back to the college football playoff. So thank you to everyone who's tuning in. We're going to get the chat active. Here we go. Jared says, "Hey, Tyler, my wife and I live in the LA area, moved here recently like you did as it stands now. Who would get in between Alabama and Notre Dame?" Well, it's a little bit early to say. Notre Dame is ranked above Alabama in the AP poll, but we're going to see how the committee ranks those two. That's going to be one of the most interesting things that I'm going to be following on Tuesday night. But we also got another one here. Thank you, Kaltizen, I think it's how it's pronounced. Shirt is awesome. If you're listening, I've got like a navy blue Notre Dame Guinness themed shirt. I got to say, I'm not like the biggest fan of Guinness in the world. I like having one or two, but usually just after a few, they get a little bit old. But I got to say, their gear is incredible, and their Notre Dame collab is really awesome. So let's dive into it, and let's talk about why Notre Dame looked like a championship contender in their win over Pitt. And this is something that I had stressed throughout all the preview stuff in the days leading up to the game, where, I talked about how Notre Dame had shown flashes of brilliance throughout the season, and we obviously had really high expectations for this team going into the season. Like, really, once Notre Dame lost Ohio State and you found out that pretty much everyone was coming back and the investment in this team, it kind of felt like, all right, well, they have to at least get back to the national championship or get back to the college football playoff semifinals if we're going to call this year a success. And it didn't start out great, right? They go 0-2 to start the year. And then even after that, they didn't look terrific against Purdue. They were still figuring out some things on the defense, but it's been a little bit uneven because the offense looked unstoppable at times at the start of the year. They scored 156 points in a 3-game stretch against Texas A&M, Purdue, and Arkansas. But as we know, the defense was straight up bad to start out the year. But then, as the defense started to turn things around, the offense sputtered a little bit against Boise State and also NC State at times, particularly in the first half and near the red zone. And then, they went out and they took care of business against USC 34-24, which was a really impressive win, especially when you consider the conditions and everything that was going on surrounding that game. It was a good win over a ranked team, and now that win looks even better as USC continues to win. But Notre Dame trailed late in the second half, and when I watched that game back, I realized they should have won that game by a lot more. They had their opportunities to really run away with it, and they just weren't able to do it. So it was a good win, but not a complete win. So they had not been able to dominate a good team from start to finish, and that is what you have to do if you consider yourself a great football team. And I think Notre Dame has all the makings of a great team. They just had not shown it on the field against another good team. Yes, they dominated Navy, but it's Navy, although they did have a good win over South Florida this weekend. But on Saturday, they were able to control the Pitt Panthers for 60 minutes. They won by 22. It should have been 28, if not for that weak touchdown at the end. I talked about that a lot in the postgame show. We don't have to spend too much time on it today, but I will say I posted that video of the exchange between Marcus Freeman and Pat Narduzzi. It already has over 1 million views. So I think people are very interested in that dynamic, and I get the sense that Pat Narduzzi has a ton of haters out there, and consider me one of them. But anyway, back to the game. I still think Notre Dame could have won by even more, but that's what makes it scary, because Notre Dame didn't play an A game overall. They played an A game defensively for sure, but not necessarily on offense and special teams, and yet they still dominated. So to me, that says that this team has another level that they can get to, and if they reach their ceiling or get close to it, they are capable of beating everyone in the country. And I would include Ohio State in that. But again, they have to reach their full potential, as Marcus Freeman likes to say all the time. They didn't reach their full potential on Saturday, but they still went out there and took it to Pitt in a way that they have not done against a good team. Like, they dominated Pitt in a way that they were not able to dominate USC. And again, it was not an A performance from the team collectively. And yeah, I understand people getting frustrated over some of the mistakes that they made. You know, the 4th and 1 call, I really did not like. The execution there wasn't great. Late in the game, they were still going for it on 4th downs. They left some points on the board. The kicking situation remains a disaster. I get that. But when I was rewatching it, when you try to just step away from the game for a second, right? Because as fans, we are so focused on we're nitpicking all the little things that they could have done differently, which is fair. And when you have a team like Notre Dame where you think they have aspirations to win a national championship, you should have really high expectations. But when you walk away for a second and you look at how Notre Dame played, that was really impressive. And I was really impressed by what I saw from the entire team. And frankly, I've been waiting to see that for a long time. Stanford Steve, my guy over at ESPN, he was on The Independent with friends of the program, Pete Sampson and Matt Fortuna this week. And he's like, I know Notre Dame is a really good team. I just want to see it. And I saw he was getting some criticism for saying that, but I agreed with him. Like, they have shown flashes they needed to put together. And even though it wasn't a perfect game, it was still a very impressive win for them. The defense was obviously the story of the day. And it's been a remarkable turnaround for Chris Ash. I have never seen one unit experience such a positive turnaround in the same season. Maybe over time, but not within the same regular season. Now, does that excuse their poor play to start the year? No. But you have to give credit where credit is due, and Ash deserves a ton of credit. So I want to make sure I get that on record, because someone tweeted at me last night that I owe Chris Ash an apology, and he tagged like a bunch of people in the Notre Dame media. And I didn't take any offense to it. I thought it was pretty funny. But like, I am not going to apologize for criticizing him when he deserved to be criticized. But at this point, I am happy to give Chris Ash all the credit in the world, because he deserves it, right? And I've noticed that there's still some like YouTube channels and Twitter accounts that are like, fire Chris Ash. It's probably time to update the username, because Chris Ash has been terrific in the second half of the year. The defense held Pitt to 2.8 yards per carry, which is what we've come to expect. Notre Dame has one of the best rush defenses in the entire country. But the way that they defended the pass was incredible. They shut down a pretty potent Pitt passing game. Say that 5 times fast. Going into this game, with Mason Heinschel as their starting quarterback, Pitt was averaging over 450 yards per game and over 40 points per game. In this one, Pitt averaged 3.2 yards per drop back, according to Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated, and Notre Dame won on the line of scrimmage and got pressure on him all night. They got pressure on Mason Heinschel on over 50% of his dropbacks, and they didn't even have to blitz, and they were still able to sack him 4 times. They could have had a few more, but like, they weren't able to wrap him up. Got to give credit to Mason Heinschel on that. He's got that Ian Book pocket spin move down. So he was tough to bring down, but Notre Dame was still able to get him down 4 times, and the secondary was just blanketing Pitt's wide receivers all game long. Nobody was open downfield. So even if Notre Dame didn't get pressure immediately, there were a lot of coverage sacks or coverage blowups in this game. They targeted Christian Gray twice in this game. His first game back from injury, he didn't allow a catch. Devontae Smith was back. I think he played his best game in a Notre Dame uniform. He was targeted 5 times. He only allowed 3 catches for 23 yards. That's 2 back-to-back really good games for Devontae Smith, and I think his absence was seriously felt at the beginning of the year. Now they have him back. They have Tate Johnson ascending in the secondary. And they have Leonard Moore, who's one of the best cornerbacks, I think the best cornerback in the entire country. He looked a little bit human at times yesterday, because he did give up, or he committed a pass interference on a 4th down play, but he only gave up 3 catches for 19 yards. And Notre Dame secondary had 1 pick 6, courtesy of Tate Johnson, and they had the longest pick 2 in football history when Adon Schuler took it 105 yards back to the crib to basically end that game. And Notre Dame's defense had 8 passes deflected. So guys were making plays all over the defense, and that is a playoff level defense that's only getting better. And once they get Gabriel Rubio back and healthy, they're going to be even better. Now, offensively, wasn't a perfect day, but that was also a good Pitt defense, and they played pretty well. They ran for 170 yards on one of the best rush defenses in the country. CJ Carr was 21 of 32 for 212 yards passing. He had 2 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, but he did have 2 interceptions. He's got to clean that up. But even though he didn't play his best game, he still played pretty well, and he got Notre Dame in good situations pre-snap. He caused a couple offsides penalties that led to big plays, and he found his playmakers down the field. Malachi Fields was spectacular. He's the best Notre Dame wide receiver since Chase Claypool. I think that's pretty easy to say. You've got Jeremiah Love doing what he does. He is just unbelievable, man. I am just having so much fun watching him play. And both of those guys just had a few I'm better than you plays where they just went out there and made a play over inferior competition, to put it lightly. And that is exactly what you need if you want to go really far in the playoff. You need dudes, and Notre Dame has dudes on offense and defense, and they have it at positions where, they haven't always had great players. Like last year, they were not very good at wide receiver. This year with Malachi Fields, and even though it wasn't a great game for Jordan Faison and Will Pauling, those guys are playing well, and I feel like that is the stuff that they were missing, especially in the national championship game last year. Now they have that. And even though the kicking game remains an issue on special teams, they got some nice returns out of Jordan Faison, and maybe the funniest kick return I've ever seen with Jadarian Price when he was literally dragging the Pitt kicker for 10 yards. But Notre Dame was able to impress in all 3 levels, and they left no doubt, despite not playing their absolute best against a ranked team on the road. So that is a really good sign if you're an Irish fan, and that should scare pretty much everyone else in college football. All right, that's the identity, that is the standard, and that is the winning football we have come to expect from this Notre Dame team. Now let's spotlight the stars. We've got game balls and top plays coming up next. All right, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Sunday Night Live here on Locked On Irish. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak, and thank you again for tuning in to the live stream and for making this your first watch or listen of the day if you're tuning in on Monday. As I said earlier, the Locked On Podcast Network is now the #1 sports podcast network in America, thanks to you, and we really appreciate the support. We've got a lot more people tuning in. The Sunday Night Live thing is something that I wanted to do at the start of the year, and I just wanted to do it during the season. I feel like every single week we've been doing this, I've noticed the viewership goes up. It's fun. It's fun to be interactive with everyone in the chat. I've seen a lot of people, getting active today. Here we go. NDN 420. Shout out to Chris Ash. Everyone wanted his ass gone at one point. You know what? It's true, but I'm glad that more people are starting to give him some credit because it just really hasn't been the case at all times. And I understand you can still be mad about the way that this year started, but then also appreciate what Chris Ash has done for this team and this group because they have been playing a lot better. But now it is time to give out some game balls for Notre Dame's win over Pitt. Let's start with offense. Now, I could give this to Jeremiah Love, right? He finished with 23 carries, 147 yards. He averaged 6.4 yards per carry, had an absolutely unbelievable 56-yard run. But you know what? I'm going to give it to Malachi Fields, who finished with 7 receptions, 99 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 4 of his 7 catches were contested too, so he was going out there making some tough plays. And he has been one of the most impactful transfer portal acquisitions Notre Dame has ever had. They thought they were getting a Malachi Fields type last year with Bo Collins, and even though Bo Collins certainly had his moments in a Notre Dame uniform, like his big catch on that last drive against Texas A&M and the touchdown in the first half against Georgia in the college football playoff, he was not making nearly the same plays that Malachi Fields is making. And Fields continues to block really hard downfield, and he is the wide receiver one that Notre Dame has been missing for a long, long time. And he's just a matchup nightmare for defenses. Like, it doesn't matter who you put on him. If Carr can just throw the ball up high where only Fields can get it, which is exactly what he did in that throw to the end zone on the left side, more often than not, Malachi Fields is going to come down with it. And when he transferred over to Notre Dame, I was obviously excited about the move. I was like, okay, this guy's more proven than Bo Collins. He's done it back-to-back years for Virginia, but he's exceeded my expectations. He has been just terrific for the Irish this year. He's already got 596 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns, which is the same amount of touchdowns he had last year at Virginia and the year prior, so he's already matched his touchdown count. And he obviously has some help in that wide receiver room, so he's not the only wide receiver, but still, to put up that kind of production is really impressive. He's averaging 18.6 yards per reception, and I think that the chemistry between him and CJ Carr is only getting better, and I just like to see him targeted more and more, especially when they're going downfield. And I love that as soon as Carr realized that he had a free play, he looked one direction, and that was to number 0, and he had 2 of the best plays of the entire day. So Malachi Fields gets the game ball on offense. Now on defense, I mean, a bunch of different guys could get this, but I think it's got to be Adon Schuler. Schuler set the tone on that opening drive when he absolutely blew up that wide receiver on 3rd down. And it was great technique to avoid targeting and then just deliver a blow. And when you make a play like that, that sends a message, one, to your own team, and another message to the other team. Like, hey, if you come across the middle and you hear me coming, you're going to feel it after you touch that football. So that was a really impressive play by Adon Schuler, one of many impressive plays he made in this game. He only had 2 tackles, but he had a big sack early on in the game on a 3rd down. Very great play. I loved that play call from Chris Ash because at the beginning of the year when Notre Dame was not getting any pressure, I was so confused why they didn't blitz from depth ever. That was like a staple of the Al Golden defense. He was able to manufacture pressures because the offense never knew who was blitzing. And then now they're using Adon Schuler. They used him a lot off the edge in this game, and it was a delayed blitz. He didn't do it right away, but he came in, made a nice move to evade a blocker, and then delivered the blow on Mason Heichel. So those were some great plays to start the game, but none compare to the pick 2. That was such an incredible return, and it effectively ended the game because whatever momentum Pitt had in that moment after the pick 6, it just went away after that. They were showing all kinds of crowd shots of all these Pitt fans who were doing like Surrender Cobra and all this stuff, and that's just got to be so debilitating in that moment. You think you've got something going, and then Notre Dame just answers immediately. But one other thing that I thought was really, really impressive on that play is the blocking downfield. You've got a defensive tackle who would run 40 yards downfield, who's lead blocking for Schuler. And obviously, like, he could have returned it 98 yards. If he gets down at the 2, it really doesn't matter. He did all that for nothing. But the fact that the whole team rallied and they knew exactly what they needed to do and where they needed to be. So it's clear that they practice that. They make it a priority that when they get an interception, they are trying to take it back to the house every single time. And in this situation, Adon Schuler was able to get there. As I said yesterday, I felt bad for him that it was only worth 2 points because when you run 105 yards, I feel like you should get a little bit more than that. But it was a really, really great game for him. He was targeted twice. He didn't allow a catch. And he is the clear leader of the secondary. And I think the defense has really started to rally around him because, going into the season, leadership was a big topic of discussion. Who was going to step up as leaders? Because last year, Notre Dame had so many really high-quality leaders, and they all left to go to the NFL. Like Riley Leonard, like Howard Cross, like Riley Mills, Xavier Watts, too many to count. Even Benjamin Morrison, despite the fact that he was injured for most of the year. And then when we were talking about this season, like who was going to step up? Well, Drake Bowen's name certainly came up a lot. I do think he's a leader. Billy Stroud in the offensive line, Emil Wagner on the offensive line. But I don't really think that many people were talking about Adon Schuler. I think I had talked about him maybe a few times. Like, yeah, he could end up being a captain, but I did not expect him to take ownership of the defense in the way that he has. And I think that he plays with such a violent energy when he's out there making plays. The team rallies around him. And, now thinking back to that last drive against Texas A&M, how different would it have been if he was just out there and not ejected for targeting? But that's neither here nor there. I just think that what Adon Schuler has been doing lately has been really, really impressive, and the defense is following his lead. So they get the game balls, Malachi Fields and Adon Schuler. Now let's talk about the best plays of the day. Well, we already talked about Adon Schuler's big hit on 3rd down. We've got to talk about Jeremiah Love's incredible 56-yard touchdown. And I got to give a shout-out to my guy, Brian Smith, who came on the show, or I guess I went on his show last week, but it was a crossover and it went up on my feed. So, we could call it whatever. It was a crossover with his show, The Portal. But my guy Brian had a great call. He said that Love might get stuffed like for 2 or 3 yard gains repeatedly, like 9 times, but then he's going to break off. And his exact words were a 56-yard touchdown. And that's exactly how long that touchdown run was for Jeremiah Love. And I think it was more impressive than his touchdown last week against Navy, because that was still really impressive. 7 different guys, touched him, but he rolls over the guy, and Navy just thought he was down. It was a really great play, but, we got to admit, it was a little bit lucky in that situation. But this play where he just goes out there, he spins one guy so badly that he collides with his other teammate. So you're basically taking out 2 guys with one move. But then it's not just the spin move, it's the way that he's able to accelerate out of that and just dust every defender that was trying, and actually had a pretty good angle on him. It just didn't matter because Jeremiah Love is just that much faster, and he is a special, special player. And I love how everyone in the college football media is really starting to understand just how good of a player he is. He has no chance of winning the Heisman. It's going to go to Mendoza, the quarterback of IU. It's a quarterback-driven award. Ty Simpson's Heisman hopes ended last night in that loss to Oklahoma, which we're going to get to in the next segment. But Jeremiah Love is so clearly one of the best players in the country. He has to be invited to New York. If he doesn't get invited to New York, what is the point of the award? If the purpose is to identify the best player in college football, and arguably the best player in college football is not there, I think Jeremiah Smith should be invited as well. We need to reevaluate everything with the Heisman. But the fact that he continues to make a spectacular play every single week and he continues to put up big numbers means he's getting a lot of attention, and I think that attention is going to lead to an invitation to the Heisman Trophy ceremony. We've talked about Tay Johnson's pick 6. The way that he just baited Heinschel into throwing that ball, that's kind of been brewing for weeks now. He had an opportunity against Boston College to get a pick 6. Now, it was a little bit more difficult because he had to extend on the play. He wasn't able to haul it in, but he's been getting there. He's been closer week after week, and now for him to go out there and get it, unfortunately for him, Joe Tessitore, who was on the call, said it was a Don Schuler at first, and I actually don't blame Tessitore because Tate Johnson's number was rolled up, and you couldn't tell that it was a 9 instead of an 8, but it was a great play by him, and I think that's going to be the first of many big-time plays by Tate. That was really good. Malachi Fields, his David Tyree-like catch where CJ Carr threw the ball downfield after drawing the offsides penalty, and I was a little bit concerned after they showed it live if he would bobbled it, because he went up, gets it with his left hand, pins it on his helmet, but he was able to get both of his arms underneath it and secure the catch on the way down. They didn't even review it, which is a pretty big surprise because they review everything in college football, but that was a spectacular catch, the best catch we've seen from a Notre Dame wide receiver make this year. And I thought that an underrated play in this game was when CJ Carr made a nice pass downfield to Eli Raridan, who had a great game, but as we talked about in the reaction show yesterday, the man is simply allergic to scoring touchdowns. It's never going to happen. The Eli Raridan anytime touchdown bet is done. It's dead. We've already lost the apartment. We've lost everything I own because we've been back in that week after week. So I've got to stop for the future of my financial health. But it's still really impressive pass by Carr because he had to layer it in between a safety and a linebacker. Like if he throws it too hard, it's getting picked. And if he overthrows it, it gets picked. But he threw it perfectly for a big chunk gain. And even though it wasn't CJ Carr's best game, it's throws like that where you're like, okay, this guy is a little bit different. Once he cleans up the mistakes, he is going to be such a good player. Malachi Fields also had the contested catch in the end zone. Great throw, great catch by CJ Carr, or great throw by CJ Carr, great catch by Malachi Fields. And that's just one of those plays where it has to be so satisfying as a wide receiver because Pitt's DBs were talking some trash in this game, and then Malachi Fields just went up, caught it right over his head, and it's just like, hey, man, you're too little. Next up there. And I thought Jadarian Price's kickoff return was so funny, and the videos after were like the kicker is just holding on for dear life, but you got to give him credit. He was able to ultimately hold him enough to get him down, and then you've got the pick 2 by Don Schuler. So overall, a ton of highlights in this game, and that is what you like to see. That's what makes watching this team so fun. They've got dudes all over the field, and those guys are going out there, and they are making plays. So those are my biggest standouts, but I think the bigger headline might be what happened everywhere else. Saturday was another wild day of college football, and there were some key results that are going to have a big impact on Notre Dame's playoff picture. That's coming up next on Locked On Irish. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. College football is in full swing, and I could not be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energies in the stands, there is just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games for as low as $25. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love the zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, welcome back to Sunday Night Live here on Locked On Irish. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host, and it has been a very fun show. Thank you again to everyone who's tuning in. If you got some questions, send them in now, because I'll take a couple questions here before we wrap things up, and also let me know where you're from, too, because it's always fun to see like where people are tuning in from, and, you know, where we're reaching different people across the United States. I can see some of it, some of the data, but it's always fun to hear like people in different parts of the country who like listening to this show. Really appreciate everyone who's tuned in so far. But let's talk about where Notre Dame stands in the college football race, because yesterday had some good and it had some bad for Notre Dame. And these upcoming rankings are going to be very interesting. Last Tuesday, it was exactly what I expected. Notre Dame moved up one spot because Texas Tech handled BYU. BYU dropped behind them, but there was some chaos on Saturday. The committee is going to have to make some very tough decisions about where specifically two lost teams are going to be ranked. But let's start off with the good things, the things that helped Notre Dame out yesterday. The first thing, USC came back to beat Iowa 26-21. And Iowa was in full control of that game early on. It was absolutely pouring rain, and it felt like it was going to just go right into what Iowa wants to do. Second straight game for them where they're playing in a monsoon, and USC went down big, but then USC was able to come back. Mekhi Lemon went berserk in this game. Iowa had no answer for him, and then USC was able to win. And then Lincoln Riley had a moment on the sidelines where he was probably the most enthusiastic I have ever seen him, specifically in a USC visor. Like, I feel like he was a little bit more animated when he was at Oklahoma, but it's been an interesting year for Lincoln Riley. I obviously am not the biggest fan of him for what he's trying to do to the rivalry with Notre Dame, but you could tell that win meant a lot to them, and USC is right there in the playoff race, I should say, because they have a game on the road this weekend against Oregon. And if they win that game, that would be huge for Notre Dame. So, as painful as it may be, we're all Trojan fans this upcoming weekend, because if they beat Oregon, Oregon is going to move behind Notre Dame, and Notre Dame, their own resume looks a lot better. That win over USC becomes even more impressive, and Notre Dame really needs that to be their signature win. So it's going to be a tough task for USC going into Oregon, but it's possible, man. It's possible. USC has some dudes out there, and again, it's going to be painful. But yesterday, there was actually a funny moment, because after I did the live show, I went to a bar, and, you know, being in Southern California, there was a lot of USC fans there, and me and another one of my friends who's also a Notre Dame fan were kind of jokingly really cheering for USC, and I had a Jeremiah Love shirt on, and I said something like "fight on" or whatever, and this other USC fan turned around and he saw me, and he was like excited, but then he saw my Jeremiah Love shirt, and he was so confused, and I'm sure that the Jeremiah Love visual probably gave him nightmares, just given the fact that Love has absolutely smoked them the last 2 years. But it was kind of just a funny joke that I was running with. Obviously, I hate USC more than anything, but one of the weird things about college football is sometimes you're forced to root for your rival, and that is the situation that Notre Dame is in right now. So USC beating Iowa certainly helped Notre Dame. Also, huge for Notre Dame that Georgia was able to handle Texas. It's not just that they won, it's that they were in full control of that game. They ended up winning 35-10, and I felt like if Texas had kept that game close, they might still be in the playoff race, even though they have 3 losses, because they still have that game against Texas A&M to end the year. And there was a real situation in my mind where, like, if Texas lost a close game on the road to Georgia, and then they beat Texas A&M, even though they have 3 losses, like, they'd still probably have a good chance to get in the college football playoff. The fact that they went out there and they just got handled, like, they're just not that great of a team. They were, you know, one of the top teams in the preseason, the number 1 overall team in the AP poll to start the year, but it was just not a great day. Georgia was moving the ball effectively on offense all night long. They got a touchdown in the opening drive, and they just kept their foot on the gas. They actually kicked an onside kick and recovered it after they had gone up. I believe it was 21-3, so very ballsy move, but they are also very aggressive like Notre Dame is on special teams. And as a matter of fact, they copied that play that Notre Dame did against them last year where they ran the punt team on the field and then they came off and the offense went out there and ran a play. They did that same thing last week against Mississippi State. So it was a good win by Georgia. They look really good. And at this point, I think Texas is officially out of the college football playoff. Texas A&M came back to beat South Carolina. And that was the full Marcel Reed experience. He was awful in the first half of that game. I don't know how many of you were tuned into that because it was happening at the same time as the Notre Dame game, but I had that going on the second screen, and they were down 30-3 at half. Shane Beamer, who is not my favorite coach in college football, to say the least, he was out there like going into half, celebrating, doing all kinds of dumb antics like he has been known to do. And then he went out there and they didn't score a single point in the second half. Texas A&M came back and won, and that's good for Notre Dame because obviously Notre Dame lost by 1 point to them at the beginning of the year. They need A&M to keep winning. If they end up winning the SEC championship, I think that helps Notre Dame's resume even more because if one of your only 2 losses is to the SEC champion, the committee is going to look at that very favorably. So that's the good stuff that happened for Notre Dame. You can also throw in Navy's win over USF. USF is actually ranked. They were at the time, at least, 24th. Navy went out there, scored 41 points. They won 41-38. And now Navy has a chance of winning the American Conference, and they could make the college football playoff as the Group of 5 bid. So that obviously helps out Notre Dame. Now let's talk about the bad. Oklahoma beating Alabama was less than ideal. And I don't know how Oklahoma won that game. They had 212 yards of offense. That is ridiculous. Well, Alabama had 3 turnovers. And even worse, Peyton Bowen, a once Notre Dame commit, had the game-ending pass breakup, and his brother Eli had a touchdown in that game. But speaking of Notre Dame commits, I was thinking about this as Peyton Bowen had a good game, and there was a point in time where Notre Dame felt like they could get both Peyton and Eli Bowen, but obviously that didn't happen. But how many snaps do you think Keon Keeley, former 5-star who's committed to Notre Dame, who then decommitted and went to Alabama, how many snaps do you think Keeley has played this year as a junior at Alabama? I'll give you a second to think. Okay, make a prediction in your head. It's 73. So that miss is not as bad as we thought in the moment. 73 snaps. He was the number 2 overall recruit in his class, and he has done nothing for the Alabama Crimson Tide. But it will be very interesting to see where the committee slots in Alabama. The AP poll has them behind Notre Dame, which I'm not going to lie, was a surprise considering, Oklahoma was ranked pretty highly. I didn't think they would drop that much, losing to a ranked team, but it was at home, so maybe that factors into it. They dropped 6 spots. They dropped from 4th to 10th, but Notre Dame stays right there at 9 because Oklahoma jumped them. Now Oklahoma is the highest ranked 2-loss team, and honestly, I think that's pretty fair. Oklahoma has some good wins. They beat Michigan, who is ranked. They beat, who else? They beat Tennessee on the road, which is difficult, and then they beat Alabama. So 2 back-to-back really impressive wins for Oklahoma when there was a point a few weeks ago where it looked like their season could go off the rails. Speaking of bad, I guess we can throw in Michigan in there too. They squeaked by Northwestern. They won on a game-winning field goal. Michigan could get in the college football playoff if they somehow knock off Ohio State. I don't think they are a very good team. They should have been exposed by now. I mean, they beat Michigan State by 11. That was a game in the fourth quarter. They beat Purdue by 5, and Purdue is terrible, and they beat Northwestern by 1. But who knows, man? They have just had they have had Ohio State's number lately. There is no reason why Michigan should have beaten Ohio State last year in Columbus. They were 3 touchdown underdogs, and yet they were able to do it. And now this year, it's a home game. So if they beat Ohio State and they finish 10-2, they're probably going to be in the playoff. And Notre Dame does not want that. They don't want to be in a situation where they're arguing with Michigan, who just beat what will likely be the number 1 team in the country. So, you would hope that Michigan, just finally comes back to earth and they lose to Ohio State, but we're going to see. Miami, they hammered NC State 41-7. They were up huge at half, but it's funny because now their fans, the Miami fans on Twitter, are acting like Notre Dame struggled with them and they had to come back in the second half to beat NC State. Notre Dame beat NC State 36-7. Miami beat them 41-7. It's not that different. The difference is Miami scored most of their points in the first half. Notre Dame scored most of their points in the second half against NC State. Miami, they do look better, though. We have to be honest about that. So that is going to continue to be a talking point as we get closer to the college football playoff. But right now, the AP poll has Miami at 14 and Notre Dame at number 9. And for all the concerns about whether or not Notre Dame is going to make the college football playoff, I think with their win yesterday, they are right there. Like, as long as they beat Syracuse and Stanford and they beat them handily, like, Notre Dame is going to be in the playoff. They are minus 3,000 to make the college football playoff on FanDuel. And they also have the 5th best odds to win the national championship. That's pretty good. Like, they have better odds than Georgia right now. So clearly, the smart people out there, they think that this Notre Dame team is a top 5 team. The committee has said in so many words that, like, hey, their resume might not be perfect, but we watch them, and they are one of the best teams in the country. I agree. It's going to continue to be a very divisive topic among the national college football media. But right now, as long as Notre Dame handles their business, I feel very confident in saying they are going to make the college football playoff. I know that there's some other situations, but like that could happen, that could make things tricky. I don't think Notre Dame is going to host a game unless if USC beats Oregon, they've got a chance. They've got a chance to host a playoff game, but still, we're going to see how that plays out. But as we wrap things up here, I did want to get a couple questions in the chat. Joe M. says, if the CFP has Notre Dame ranked at 9 again, ND gets in if they win out. That's true. I think even if they are 10th, they're still probably going to get in. Mike Patterson says Tay will be the next big star. This is pretty funny. James Paul Taylor says, and why is Denbrock still throwing the ball on 4th and goal from the 1 when Notre Dame has Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price? Look, man, I don't know. CJ Carr has to go under center. I can't keep dealing with this anymore. Like, I know it didn't look great when he went under center when they were backed up to their own goal line after the defense forced to stop, but they've just got to figure it out. They've got to have him practicing during the week. It's so much harder to score from and convert in short yardage situations, running from the shotgun, running out of the pistol. Like, that has been proven now. There's been all kinds of studies who did that, who showed that it just way less successful, and yet Notre Dame continues to try to do any of this. Ryan Toussaint just made it. Ryan from Maine may have been answered, but what's the word on Dawson? Is he going to be okay? Have not heard anything about Jared Dawson, but obviously it's becoming a little bit of a concern now because Notre Dame has had several injuries now at defensive tackle. Obviously, they're without Gabriel Rubio. Donovan Hinish was dealing with a concussion recently, but Jared Dawson has been playing really good football. He left that game with an injury. We're going to find out on Monday. I'm pretty sure when Marcus Freeman has his press conference. Then we got a couple of people chiming in with where they're from. Ray says Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Paul Kinlan says Buffalo, New York. Ooh, Santa Fe Springs, California. Shout out to David. But yeah, I appreciate everyone who's joining in. This has been a lot of fun. Michael says, Tyler, who to blame more for the pick 6, Carr's decision-making, or Denbrock's play calling? I think it's probably CJ Carr, but it's like 51-49 because, look, if you're Carr, the defender was right in front of you, man. You cannot throw that. He's right there. How do you miss him? But Denbrock is also to blame because I didn't like that play call, and they've just done it too many times that teams are expecting it now. Like, Pitt read that the whole way. It's on tape, and it was just a predictable play call in that moment. They read it perfectly, but still, if you're CJ Carr, you have just got to dirt that. And he's still learning, man. He's a redshirt freshman. He's going to make some mistakes. We're living through the growing pains. I still think he has a really, really bright future. I think he's going to do some amazing things for Notre Dame in the college football playoff. And the way that the deep ball has just been unlocked with him as the quarterback has just been really fun to watch. And also, we have to be honest, he took some shots in that game against Pitt. Way more than I think he's had taken all year. I mean, he took some big ones against Texas A&M, but give credit to CJ Carr. He showed that he's a little bit more mobile than people give him credit for, but Pitt was going to bring a ton of pressure. We knew that going in, and they got home sometimes. And I think that, there's some times in that game where maybe he wasn't all the way locked in, but I still think CJ Carr is a terrific quarterback, and he's going to do some great things for Notre Dame next year and this year as well. But that is going to do it for this edition of Sunday Night Live here on Locked On Irish. Thank you to everyone who tuned in for the live stream. If you're here on Monday, thanks for making this your first watch or listen of the day. And before you head out, please remember to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. And if you enjoyed the show today, please like the video if you're watching on YouTube, or rate the show 5 stars, and leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. So I'm going to be back on Tuesday with Luke Smith, as we do every single week throughout the year. We're going to share our final thoughts on the win over Pitt, break down the 3 things we liked and didn't like from the game. And I think we're going to have a special boots on the ground report for this one because neither Luke nor I was able to make that game, but we do the boots on the ground every single week. So I think we're going to have a fun way to do it this week. But overall, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I will see you on Tuesday.